I think we can start. So let's kick off. My name is Niko Demchuk. I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer at AMLBot, and I have around 10 years of experience working as a lawyer in a law firm for around 4 years. Then I moved to be in-house senior auditor for Big Four, doing AML audit of banks, investment funds, insurance companies, and now I am a lawyer and compliance specialist in a Fintech startup, AMLBot, RegTech startup. So today's topic, we will talk about compliance officer in crypto asset service provider. It's rather focused for those who would love to actually learn what is compliance officer, what is his rights, obligation, how does his everyday look like, etc. So it's for those who are actually learning about compliance officer or about AML, wants to discover maybe new professional opportunities, etc. So it's more for those who are new to this role rather than those who are experienced and already have a huge background. If you have questions during my presentation, you can type it in the chat. I'm from time to time looking at it, so I will try to answer it right away. If not, then we'll have a special time for our Q&A session after my presentation. Okay, let's start. So, who is a compliance officer, or what is a compliance officer? So, usually when a company is setting up its AML processes, it usually sets up 3 lines of defense. The first line of defense, second line of defense, and the third line of defense. So the first line of defense is usually those business operations or those people who are directly engaging with clients, with sales, with customer service, etc. Of course, these people needs to have procedures, guidelines, how they should work, what type of documents they should ask, etc. That is responsibility of the second line of defense, where we place the compliance officer. So the compliance officer is the main person of the company who is responsible for compliance. In our situation, it is anti-money laundering compliance, yes? So usually it's the employee of the company who ensures that the company complies with its outside regulatory and legal requirements. So there is laws and regulations depending on the country of incorporation of the business that the company needs to obey to. And of course, plus internal requirements and by law. So apart from the outside legal requirements, yes, the laws, if it is a financial institution or crypto asset service provider, they should also have its internal rules and policies, and the compliance officer is the one who is checking if the company is compliant with the external laws and internal policies and procedures. As I mentioned before, it's usually the employee of the company, so it should be the employment contract, not a freelance contract, not a contractor agreement, etc. When we are talking about serious business that is licensed, for example, MiCA, or any other like a good license, similar to MiCA in other countries, then this is a requirement to be an employee. And usually when you think about employee, you think, okay, so the usually employee follows what the management of the company is saying, etc. But in terms of compliance officer, it's a rather very special position, because he is the one who is responsible for compliance, and he should be kind of independent, yes? So usually the management is the one who needs to follow what the compliance officer is saying, what the compliance officer is suggesting, how the internal policies, how the internal processes needs to be adjusted, needs to be changed, etc. So it's not that the compliance officer always follows what the management is saying. No, here is a bit different situation. Because why? Because first of all, compliance officer can be responsible if a company is doing really bad in terms of compliance. Maybe the company's services are used for money laundering, so the compliance officer can have responsibility. So that's why his position is a bit different and should be kind of independent in the company. But what I also see in the market that sometimes, in some cases, it is possible that the compliance officer can work on a contractor basis, on a freelance basis, on a service agreement basis, etc. And this usually happens when the company is incorporated in the country where there is no regulation of the crypto services, or where there is very light regulation. So there is no actually requirements for the company and for the compliance officer. So that's the case where compliance officer can work on a contract basis. It used to be the case also in the European Union before MiCA came into effect. I know there were some situations, like the situation in Czech Republic or in Poland, where it was possible actually not to employ the person, because for the company, of course, it's easier to work on a service agreement, meaning they just pay the invoice that the compliance officer is issuing, and they do not deal with taxes, with social security funds, etc. But as I said, when we talk about MiCA license or any other serious licenses, usually it should be the employee of the company, yes, work on the employment basis. And who is this person? Yeah, what this person should have in order to be qualified as a compliance officer. So I would say this person should have the relevant education. And by relevant, I mean, and what I see also, if you will look at the job ads, or if you will look how regulatory authority assess the compliance officer, they usually expect a person to have a legal degree or degree in finance, in business administration, in sometimes economics. So it should be somehow relevant to compliance, to finance, to management. Other points that usually compliance officers should have, of course, is a relevant experience. So when we are talking about compliance officer, we already have in mind an experienced person. So someone who is without experience cannot become compliance officer right away. Yes, I know, if especially if you are coming from a small startups, and it was the case in the European Union, where it was easy to receive the WASP licenses, and just for the WASP licenses, you will need to have someone who is a compliance officer. So this someone could be any person, and that was sufficient at that point of time. But again, now it's not the case, especially if we're talking about good license in a good jurisdiction. It should be the person that could prove that he actually has already experience working in compliance, doing some AML processes, etc. So it should be also relevant education and a relevant experience, at least for 3 years. Then this person, of course, should have a clear background. What it means by this, usually he needs to send his criminal record, as there are no any criminal responsibilities, liabilities in the past, and it's good to have also some certification, yes, that proves that the compliance officer, apart from the education, was also going through some specific trainings, specific webinars where he mastered his skills, for example, in blockchain analytics, yes, which is very relevant for those who work for crypto startups, or some other management skill, because it's also a manager. Compliance officer is a manager, so he should also manage a lot of processes, and the management certification is also good to have for a compliance officer. When it comes to crypto-related experience, yes, what I mean here. Any business, especially those who provide financial services, cryptocurrency financial services, deploy blockchain analytics in their business, meaning they screen cryptocurrencies or crypto addresses for AML risk, because blockchain is transparent, so it's possible to see the origin of crypto assets. And since it's possible to see, there is also a risk that the business might touch or might work with cryptocurrency that are illegal or that are coming from some criminal criminal cases. In order to avoid this, of course, company deploys blockchain analytics, but blockchain analytics basically is a software that produces some results that gives you the results about the riskiness of the, for example, transactions, and they also give the results about the signals of these transactions, or if we are screening the crypto wallet, it shows you the counterparties, transaction history, etc. But there should be also the person, the one who understands, yes, how to work with such blockchain analytics. So it's good if compliance officer is also, let's say, tech savvy, yes, and they understand what actually this software from blockchain analytic company shows and how to deal with this, how to approach it, and how it can help you to mitigate all those risks that is coming from cryptocurrency experience. Here I can also tell from my own experience of talking to compliance officers, especially those who were working before for conservative financial institutions such as banks and never worked before with cryptocurrency. For them, it was quite a challenge to understand that you could actually screen cryptocurrency, to quite a challenge to understand all those signals that are that might be dangerous, that might be suspicious, or those who you can trust. What are those? How to approach, for example, if there is a big percentage in the transaction of ATM, which is usually a suspicious signals, etc. So for them, it was quite a challenge. They were urgently looking for some certification programs, trainings in order to upgrade their skills in this regard. But besides of screening, when we are talking about crypto-related experience, it's also good to understand what is crypto investigation. Yes, it's a bit different services that is provided by blockchain analytics company that gives you much more details about what is happening in the blockchain, much more details about the origin of the crypto assets. And here you can also see on the slide that it's usually there is a transfers between different addresses, but you also need to be the one who understands it, yes? First of all, because sometimes you will need such a service in order to mitigate the risk or receive additional information about suspicious transactions in order to understand the origin of the illegal or risky crypto assets. And on the other hand, you might need it because nowadays there are many, for example, scams happening, people who are losing their crypto assets, and then they turn to blockchain analytics companies, and blockchain analytics companies do for them crypto investigation report, basically tracing of crypto assets, of stolen crypto assets, and then a victim goes with such tracing report to crypto exchanges and tells them, hey, my assets were stolen, I have a crypto tracing report, here it is. As you can see, the stolen crypto assets are now actually ended up at your service. Can you please freeze it, block it, etc. So compliance officer, the one who can take decision about this topic, should also understand what is crypto investigation report, how to actually understand it, if it's fake or if it's true, if it's done properly or if it's a mistake, and you might not want to block or freeze funds or with a customer who has nothing to do with stolen cryptocurrency, or who has nothing to do with a crime that is happening with cryptocurrency. And besides this, of course, it would be good if the person also understands technology. And what it means here is basically that there is some technology that provides anonymization, for example, mixers, for example, privacy token that is not traceable, or how does DeFi protocol, how do DeFi protocols work, meaning that there is quite a popular technique to launder money with DeFi protocols. DeFi protocols usually don't do, yes, customer identification verification. So all of this technology related topic would be good that compliance officer understand, and would be much better if he has a hands-on experience. In terms of certification, yes, I would emphasize that the most popular one, and usually when you have such a certification, people who work in anti-money laundering industry know the certification. It comes. Yes, have you heard about it? You can let me know in the chat. Let me check also if you were asking anything. Yes, I see many people knows it. Yeah, so it's good if you would like to become a compliance officer, that you would also take such an exam. Me myself, I also took such an exam. For me, maybe it was a bit easier to do since I'm coming from a legal background, and then I was working a couple of years in the law office consulting clients on anti-money laundering. So for me, it was easier, let's say, to pass it, but I still spent a lot of hours to prepare for such exam. I did many tests before, and I did it from the first try. But yes, it's not an easy exam, especially if you do not have practical experience or if you don't have legal background. So it's also, you need to understand how the law works, etc. But it's good to have. So if you are the one who is looking to become a compliance officer, once you get such a certificate, it gives you a good knowledge about the regulation worldwide, but mainly EU and US. Then also how to approach different situations when you have law enforcement requests, etc. So it's good to have. Once you have it, you can actually, it's a strong point if you would be applying for a compliance officer that would stand you out among other applicants, especially if they do not have CAMS certification. The other one is ACA certification in AML, and at AMLBot we also do have AML trainings, 3 of those. The one is a general anti-money laundering for crypto asset service provider. So it's in general what is AML, and then peculiarities when it comes to blockchain business, crypto business. The other one is about blockchain analytics. Yes, more specific. That's what we actually do at AMLBot. We are a blockchain analytics company. So we provide you what is risk scoring, what is how you need to understand it, how you need to approach it, what to do with this, how it's calculated. Then what's the difference between scoring transactions, wallets, crypto investigation, what are the challenges, etc. And the third one is very specific on crypto investigation. So if you would really want to go deeper in blockchain analytics, and maybe instead of becoming a compliance officer, to become a crypto investigator, then this could be very useful for you. You will learn how actually investigation happening, how you need to do it, what are those points that you need to take into consideration, what are the challenges, especially when Mixer is used. Yes, that is usually very difficult to trace funds if Mixer was deployed, but this training could also provide you some demixing tips. So basically, in some cases, it would be actually possible to know where the funds went, even if the mixer was used in the past. Yeah, I see people say about CAMS that is good, but it's very expensive. True, it's very expensive, but I can tell you from my own experience, a lot of people know it, and once you have it and you say that you did it, you already receive like +1. Okay, so let's move on with our presentation and talk about approval by the Supervisory Authority. So the compliance officer, the one who is about, for example, to be appointed at the crypto business, he usually needs to be, or she needs to be approved by the Supervisory Authority. What it means? It means that he needs to pass so-called fit and proper test. So as I say, if it's a, for example, Mykola is in business or any other good jurisdiction, you cannot just appoint someone, just decide, okay, this person compliance officer, and this person would be appointed as a compliance officer, and there will be no questions about this. No, usually this person needs to also go, in some cases, in some countries, through the approval process. So you need to send the information about the compliance officer to the supervisory authority, and then the supervisory authority will look at his background, what we discussed before, his experience, his education, where did he work, if he has a sound knowledge about that specific services that the company is providing, if he is unbiased, if he is transparent, if he is knowledgeable, if etc. So they look at all of these points, and then if they give a green light, the company can appoint such a person as a compliance officer. But there were some cases where the supervisory authority did not agree with the candidate, and then the company needs to look for another person. So usually, so that is also the case. But if there is a business, as I say, in a jurisdiction that does not regulate crypto asset service providers, or if it's a very light regulation, then I really doubt that that would be such a requirement to actually receive the approval from the regulatory authority in order to appoint a compliance officer. Let's talk about duties of the compliance officer. So what is that he needs to do? What is his responsibility in the company? So first of all, organization skills. So he needs to organize all those processes, AML processes in the company, such as client onboarding, identification, verification, transaction monitoring, storing, keeping the customer data, internal processes, who reports to whom, who is the final person who is responsible for everything. Usually it's compliance officer. Then he is also the one who organizes the process when it comes to suspicious transactions. He is the one who is reporting suspicious transactions or suspicious customer to the financial intelligence unit. So usually here, first of all, he receives the data, login data, because now the reporting is done online, not by email, and it means that the financial intelligence unit of that country usually uses some system that provides login details to compliance officer in different companies, and if there is a suspicious activity report, then the compliance officer needs to log in, complete every data that is asked in the form, and enter submit, and then the report goes to the financial intelligence unit. Apart from this, of course, compliance officer needs to talk about its management and provide reports of what is going on with compliance. For example, if in the first quarter, how many high-risk clients were accepted, what were the problems, maybe there is something needs to be changed, etc. Compliance officer also the one who organizes trainings. Yes, there might be some general training for all employees of the company. It's actually also the requirement coming from the law. And there might be some specific training only for those who are working in compliance in the company. For example, there is changes in the law that also affect how you need to identify the customer. It means that there should be some changes in the processes, and then you also need to deliver such changes to all your personnel who are working on this. So the training needs to be organized. And when the company is facing the audit, usually if it's again, it depends on the country. There are some countries that requires you to have the AML audit, like a separate from financial audit. And there are countries where part of financial audit that needs to be done. Also, the auditors are checking your AML KYC processes, how you actually comply with anti-money laundering legislation in the country you operate. And when it comes to the rights of the compliance officer, so has the right to make proposal to the management about maybe something needs to be changed in the processes. Maybe there are so many suspicious transactions, or the company is growing and the amount of customers are also growing. So it means also the risks are also growing, and you need more people working on this. So you need to ask for the management a budget, that you need to maybe find a few more people in your department who will address all those new job that is coming from new clients. So basically, everything that comes to compliance processes in the company, the compliance officer can give his opinion, what needs to be changed, what needs to be improved. Maybe there's some new solutions in the market in terms of fraud detections that company needs to have. So of course it needs to be communicated with the management, because it's a budget. You need to spend the resources to integrate such a solution inside your processes, etc. So in general, these are the obligations and rights of the compliance officer in the company. When it comes to reporting, so compliance officer is actually the one who is reporting suspicious transactions in the company. Usually there is some people or personnel who is making the first investigations, collecting data about suspicious transactions, customers, make the conclusion why this transaction is suspicious, and then this is sent to compliance officer, and then the compliance officer is the one who reviews if everything is done correctly and in accordance with internal AML policies and procedure. If not, then it can be refused and it's requested to improve the investigation. Or if everything is done correctly and he agrees with the conclusion that, okay, indeed, there is some suspicion, then he is the one who actually sent this suspicious transaction report or suspicious activity report to the FIU. Since he is a contact person, so the FIU usually has his contacts, has the contact of the person who is compliance officer in the company, and this also person, as I say, he has a login data from the system where he needs to do reporting. So everything is done online. AML policies also very important for crypto or any other financial company to have written AML policies and procedures. Usually it's a very detailed document that in detail provide guidelines for the personnel how and what they need to do in that or the situation. For example, what kind of documentation they need to ask from high-risk client, from medium-risk client, or if the client is a PEP, politically exposed person, how the process look like, what they need to ask, from whom they need to receive the approval in order to accept such a customer, etc. Then how they need to monitor transactions. These are processes, apart from those that should actually comply with the laws that where the country operates, where the crypto business operates. Plus, they also need to be much more detailed than the law, because it's a guidelines instruction for the personnel based on which they work. So if they have any questions, okay, what they need to do in this or that situation, they should not go to the compliance officer. They should go to the written policies and procedure, and over there, everything should be in detail in every situation. What they should do in this or in that situation. And compliance officer is responsible for such AML policies and procedures. So he's also the one who makes changes or makes a proposal to make changes. He's the one who is responsible for compliance. So this AML policy is compliant with the regulations. If something changes in the regulation, the AML policy and procedure also needs to be changed, because if AML policy and procedures are bad written or they're not compliant with the law, it means that the company is doing something wrong, and they are for sure not compliant with the law. And then later on, when the regulatory authority will come to make an audit or to check the company's processes, they will for sure there for sure will be some findings, and the company will risk to have fines or to have license revocation. And here some easy slide for you, not only about the law and compliance officer rights and obligation, but actually a typical job offer in relation to compliance officer, how it looks like. Yes, in the internet I actually find one, but they're more or less looking similar. So usually, as you see, they require relevant education, then at least 3 years of experience. This is very important for those who want to be compliance officer. As I said before, compliance officer cannot be just like without experience a compliance officer. No, this person needs at least to have to work as an AML analyst or as a KYC specialist, some other jobs before becoming a compliance officer. Then, of course, strong understanding of cryptocurrency blockchain. So most probably this company was from crypto industry, had an experience with AML KYC, to know international regulatory standards, working with FinCEN, OFAC, sanctions related, etc. So here you can see that what we have been talking before, this are actually the requirements for the compliance officer in real life. So is there anyone who actually can become looking at these requirements of compliance officer among our participant viewers? Yes, I see. Yes, so it's nice to read that there are some already experienced compliance officers are also attending these webinars. Okay, let's continue and let's see how the typical day of compliance officer looks like. So compliance officer comes to job, and then I'm sure this person is usually has a lot of work. I think it's quite also stressful because you are actually responsible for the company's compliance with the anti-money laundering legislation. So there is none of the customer who wants to abuse your services and launder money via your services. And you always deal that, okay, if this transaction is suspicious or not suspicious. So apart from this, you also need to track, as it says, regulatory developments. Maybe there is a new changes in the law that you also affects your business, and you need to very quickly implement new processes. Then there is also reporting to the board. The management board also expects you to know, okay, what's going with the compliance, if everything is good, or maybe in one quarter we received the plus 50% in high risk clients. So it means, okay, maybe something is wrong. Maybe these people, high risk client, knows that they can become our clients and use our services and abuse them because we have maybe some loopholes or drawbacks in our AML processes. Educate staff, as I say, something new comes up, or new processes, or new outsourcing partner for fraud detection or blockchain analytics. You need to educate staff how to work with that. Of course, control the staff if they work properly, if what is written in AML policies and procedures is also actually effective in practice, or what is written is one thing and what the people do in practice is totally different one. And of course, also amend policies and procedures. So now we came to, I think, the most interesting part of our presentation, because I will give you example with a real experience from 3 different companies, those who are incorporated in the European Union, in Seychelles, and in Ukraine. I had a call with the compliance officers of those 3 crypto businesses, and they were telling me their own experience, what is for them, how it is for them to work compliance officer in a crypto business, what are their challenges, and what are their recommendations for those who actually want to take such a role. So some of them was obligated to go through a approval by the regulatory authority. So it's a real thing, as I said before. And the regulatory authority did take into consideration the experience, the education. Also, in some cases, they invite you for the interview. So it's not only that you need to send all the details about you, your CV and your experience, but sometimes you also need to come to their office and have the interview with the regulatory authority in order to become a compliance officer for the crypto business. Their first day at work. So how did they describe me, their first day at work? So when they come, of course, if there is already something happening, it's not a new business, they need to familiarize themselves with the AML processes and policies of the company. So it's usually a lot of reading, a lot of researching what is going on, what are the processes, etc. If it's a new business that is only starting, then there's the one who needs to create such processes from the scratch, and it does take time. And they say that usually in their team, from 1 to 3 people are working. So we can say that they were rather crypto startups, yes, young company rather than the big companies. Because if it's 1 or 3 people, it's not a lot. I did ask, what is the biggest challenge for you to work as a compliance officer in crypto startups? And that is their responses. Travel rule compliance. And I do agree with them, since we also have clients at AMLBot who are crypto businesses. It's a big headache nowadays to comply with such a requirement. There are many issues. I think I need to do a totally separate webinar about it, why it's such a problematic. But starting from that, what is written into law is really difficult to do in practice, or sometimes impossible. Starting from there is no unified protocol that everyone uses, like in a banking system when everyone uses Swift, and that is sufficient. You just need to connect to it, and then voila, you are compliant with the travel rule. In crypto industry, it's not the case. Also, sunrise issue. Yes, when there is some countries that already have travel rule as a requirement, and there are others that actually do not have such a requirement. So how to do a transfer with someone who do not have any infrastructure or do not even need to comply with such a rule? Another point was that when it comes to reporting of suspicious transactions, yes, so usually you need to do it online. Yeah, you go online, there is a system that is offered from the regulatory authority, usually FOU, and usually there is fields that you need to fill in and type submit. But when it comes to suspicious transactions and crypto transactions, there are different details that you need to provide. Yeah, you can provide hash, you can provide the address receival or the withdrawal address. You need to provide the blockchain type, etc. And sometimes the system are not adjusted for suspicious crypto transactions. So you actually have problems to fill in such a suspicious transaction report and submit it to the FIU. Just because it's not possible, it's not envisioned in some in the form itself. Also, there were some complaints that usually it's a lot of work, but not so many people working in compliance. And the international coverage, meaning that crypto services provided online, any customer from all over the world can access, can use your services. And in some countries, there are different rules. Even if you serve someone from one country, maybe there is some rules that you need to actually comply with, but you don't know. So it's an international issue, let's say, that you need to really monitor what is happening worldwide, what are the new crypto regulations, etc., in order not to violate the law and then have the risk of fines from some countries that you didn't even expect to have. Communication with the management. I asked them, did you actually communicate with your management? Do they understand it? Is it easy with them to communicate? So they say that yes, it's actually ongoing communication. And usually the topics are about high-risk clients, if they need to update policies or if they need some new system to deploy. So of course should be some plan of the budget, of the people, new hires, etc. And they deliver a report on a quarterly basis what is going on with compliance in the company. This is also one of the interesting topics that every compliance officer will deal, and maybe not very pleasant one, because in the company there is a business needs and there is a compliance needs. And sometimes from the point of view of a compliance officer, of course, it's better not to take high risk, something that is just high risk, because then there is a high risk that your company might be used for money laundering. But from the business needs, yes, it's actually the opportunity to earn more profit, to have more clients, and to make more money. So it will be also always a fight between, in terms of how hard you should do for your clients to go through onboarding process, to send you documents, etc., because this will all eventually affect how much money will they bring. Will they say, okay, it's too much asking, I will go and find someone else who asks less documents? So there is always a risk to lose clients if you ask too much or if you demand too much documentation. But from the compliance officer, of course, it's much better to ask more information, to get more documentation, because you can mitigate more risks. But from the business point of view, it's actually a big minus for them that might lead to revenue loss. So it's always a fight, and every compliance officer will deal with this, will actually have some unpleasant maybe communication with the management, why they need to do this and this, even if it will affect the revenue of the company. But hey, this is the life, how it is, and everyone face same problems. I also ask if you communicate with the Supervisory Authority, and what they say, I'm not surprised. They say very rarely, and actually, even if you send some suspicious activity report, transaction report, Supervisory Authority usually never comes back, what you need to do else, etc. I think, of course, they receive a lot of such transactions, suspicious activity reports, so they cannot respond to anyone. And also when it comes to blockchain and crypto, they might also be the one who is only learning what it is, how to actually approach it, what are the risks there, and what you need to do. So that's why usually it's a silence from their end. And about advices, yes, it comes to our final part of the webinar about advices that they gave. And now I'm transmitting to you. So when it comes to business, if you do not want to be a compliance officer, but you want to maybe build a crypto business, it's really wise to include your compliance officer if you're working on a new idea or new method of delivering your services or products, because from the very beginning, compliance officer can see what are the risks there, and they can also offer some solutions. So it will not be the case where you actually come up with the idea, you build the processes, and then the compliance officer will kill it in the end because it's not compatible with AML regulations. So it's always good if a company is actually working on something new, on providing new services, etc., to engage compliance officer from the very beginning. And their own experience, feedback that they shared with me. So they say it's an ongoing learning, and learning something new about blockchain analytics, technology, laws and regulation, and also about being flexible. They say that crypto is a big mess, unclear, a gray zone. So it's always a lot of uncertainty. What you do, how you mitigate your risk. You never know 100%. You need to actually learn new technologies, because there is always new technologies every 1-2 year comes up, like the DeFi protocols and then the knowledge protocol. Something new always comes up that might affect your business, and then you need to learn about it. Just because there is so many new things merging, there is no one to ask advice, like what to do in this and that situation. So that's why you need to think out of the box and come up with some creative decision. So these are the general feedbacks. And with the general feedbacks, it actually brings us to the end of this webinar. And I will be happy to respond to your questions if you have one. I go from the very beginning. I see there is a question from Maria. Could I recommend some crypto investigation, crypto blockchain analysis courses? Yes, I do. Actually, almost every blockchain analytics company offer such courses. So if you will go to their website, you will find information. We at AMLBot also do offer such courses on blockchain analytics and a separate on crypto investigations. If you will need more information, just get in touch with us using our social media contacts. There is a question about CFE. I'm not really aware about this certification. What I'm sure about, it's about CAMPS, that is worldwide known. And if you have one, regardless which country you will work on or will go to, they all will know about CAMPS. But there are many other AML related certification. In any of them, if you will come, it will be good for you and will be a plus. I think so. We will send recording after the webinar, so you will have it. The question about, could you tell us average salary of the compliance officer? I cannot tell. I think it depends on the country and the company, how big is a company. But since it's usually considered to be a senior role, so I think that the salary would be always higher than for the entry-level jobs. There is a question that if tools such as cryptocurrency screening and crypto investigation are the mandatory skills for compliance officer. I would say if the compliance officer works for crypto startups, I would say so they are mandatory. Okay, if you are a compliance officer and then you have a specialist that is only focused on this, then maybe you can cover this part because you'll have an expert who will be explaining you and interpreting you what is happening in the blockchain. But in general, I would expect that from the compliance officer working for a crypto startup, that they do understand it. Maybe not so deep to do crypto investigation themselves, but at least to understand what is going on and how to approach the risk that they see from the reports of a blockchain analytics company. There is an interesting question about tipping off. So tipping off is the crime, and what it means that the company is letting know the client who is under investigation, know that he's under investigation. For example, if the company has a suspicious client that does suspicious transactions, such company shall never tell that this client is under investigation, because then it would mean that the company is breaking the law. So, of course, the company can ask questions, can communicate with such client, but should never share that there is something on the background in the company is going on, and most probably the suspicious activity report about this customer will be sent to the financial intelligence unit. About the effective process, of course, the most effective process is the trainings to the personnel, to the sales team, to those who communicate with such customers. It's good if there is also some test after the training, so they can actually not only listen to the training, but also confirm that what they listen to, they understand. So that's actually the most effective tool, I would say. There is a question that there is always a struggle between business needs and compliance need. Is there any advice on how to keep the perfect balance? It's on a case-by-case basis. Being a lawyer and coming from this compliance background, I think I could tell you it's really difficult. Really difficult in terms of, first of all, just because if you are the person that is always sticking to only how you think, or always sticking like, okay, the law says this, and you're very strict, and you don't want to find any ways how you can still be compliant but still do what the company wants to do, then it might be difficult for you to work for crypto companies, because they usually demand flexibility, management, I mean. My advice would be never tell no from the start to management if they say you that they want to implement these new services, and you need to find a way how to do it compliant. Even if you see there is a big risk and it will be very difficult, saying no from the very beginning might lead to the situation when they will not be satisfied with your work, and then you will have also some problems in terms of how they treat you, not like treating you, but that they actually are not maybe meeting their expectations, etc. So you always need to be flexible, and you need to think out of the box and be creative, that you still comply with the law, still taking into consideration compliance needs, but at the same time, business can be innovative and can deploy new ways of delivering services or new products. There is a question, what do you think about combining the compliance officer and AML officer functions in a small CASP? For Mika, I think if it's a small CASP, it's okay to combine these two roles. It usually, in many companies, it's usually one person who does it. It's always, as an AML legislation likes to say, on a risk-based approach or on the situations that you have. If it's a small company, small business, and you don't really have a lot of work to do, then yes, I understand that it can be one person that does all the work, or two persons that does all the work. But of course, if it's you have a lot of clients, you have a lot of transactions, then it's difficult to imagine that one or two person they would have sufficient time and resources to actually go through a lot of suspicious transactions, clients, and that the processes would be really in compliance with the internal rules and in the law. So it's always depending on the size of the company, on the size of the customer base, then you would need to structure your compliance team. Again, there is an interesting question that I would love to discuss. Can be a board member, a CEO, a chief financial officer, also an AML officer in a small CASP for Mika? Let's say Mika is very new. So let's see what will be in practice. Now we have only laws, but let's see how actually regulatory authorities, those who are issuing licenses, interpret the law and they apply in practice. In this situation, I would say that in some countries, if you are a board member, you cannot be also a compliance officer or AML officer, because it would be a conflict of interest. Yes, as I say, you are a board member, or maybe if you are also a board member and the owner of the business, so of course you would be the one who you would want to take all the risks just to get more money from the customers and get more revenue. So it will be a conflict of interest that if it would be, again, the battle between compliance risk and or needs and the business needs, you will be always the one who will go for business needs. So in some countries it might be conflict of interest, so it would not be allowed. And I think for Mika it would be a conflict of interest. So I think there should be always board members, and then the compliance officer should be different people. But let's see how it will be in practice. So it's difficult to say now. Okay, I think there are my questions about repeating. So I think I answered almost every question that was asked. There is also an interesting question whether it's possible to hire a compliance officer in Poland for 3K euro. I think so. I think it's possible. Everything is possible. But thank you so much for your attention. If you will have any additional questions, you can also let us know. The recording will be sent to you after the trainings. Yep. Bye-bye.